All right. So sorry about the confusion. Actually, Dulce brought it to my attention that she thought it was tomorrow, not tonight. So that's why I sent that announcement. Our people are getting announcements, right? You get a notification or something when I post an announcement. I'm just trying to make sure because I'm having some difficulty in both classes. Sometimes they're not posting and I'm not sure why they're not posting. So I'm just trying to check and make sure.
I see them. Yeah.
Okay. And so this week, or let me just go back here. So I wanted to go back and walk you through your journey so far about what else we're learning this week and how that's all coming together. Because I'm sure students will ask me sometimes, why are we studying all these things? Why don't we just study growth and development from the beginning? Why do we have to know all of these other things? Actually, because community colleges, it's part of the curriculum that we have to teach. And also, I always feel like a good foundation, we learn all these foundational things that we can then bring into growth and development as we study. So that's why week one, we started off with the scientific method and the theories of growth and development because we're studying well, the theories, obviously, because that's going to help us as we progress through this, but also the scientific method. We talked about the operant conditioning, the different types of behavioral theories which will help us when we are teaching or educating, as healthcare professionals, as we're educating patients and clients in the future. And then in week two, we moved on to social determinants of health and governmental influences. Governmental influences, policies, power, those kind of things could be thought of as structural determinants of health. We don't cover that as much in this class. That's more of a public health concept. But these are things that can affect health and affect health at different stages of growth and development. So that's why we look at those, because remember, this is a growth and development class specifically for healthcare professionals, not just like Psych 25, which is a lot of the just the physical kind of changes and theories. And this, we're weaving in health education as well. So this week, what we are looking at is we're looking at communication, therapeutic communication, so that we can talk to those that we are helping. We can talk to parents, we can talk to children, we can talk to the elderly, we can talk to people that are going through something, experiencing something that's difficult for them, that type of thing. So we're going to look at communication and then also different family influences on growth and development and different cultural influences on growth and development. And so let's look and see what you accomplished for week two. I try to always put in the accomplishments so you students always, so you can see what you've accomplished, because you've accomplished a lot. And I know many of you are taking more than one class this summer. So I commend you for staying on top of everything. And so you worked on your social determinants and you're working on your community windshield survey, which I think will be very interesting. Hopefully you will learn a lot from doing those things. And then it also helps you see what's going on in your community so that you're able to think about, how will this affect growth and development of the lifespan? Looking at, playgrounds, schools, adult daycare centers, different things like that. And you're working on your journal entries and the quiz. The average for the week two quiz was 96%. So that was amazing. Kind of some more short answer ones there. And everybody did follow the directions really well. So most people did really well with those questions. I did put in the welcome to week 3 announcement. If we go back, because I know someone had a question. I think it was Alvaro had a question on what questions go into the journal this week. And so I wanted to make sure that I had listed all of those. And so you're going to complete your journal for week 2 here. So these are the prompts from week 2. And then these are the prompts for this week week 3. So basically, if you go to the bottom of each lesson page, that's where you will find the reflection prompts. So just making sure that everybody was aware of that. So let's walk through the week. So family, cultural influence, therapeutic communication. The format of the pages did change a little bit because I learned how to do tabs last summer, which was pretty cool. And so everything's sort of in one place, and you just click on the different tabs and that will give you the different information. I will post tonight's walkthrough here. This is the one from last summer if people wanted to look through that. And as always, you have your link back to the module for the week. And I always post the course objectives, and then each week's lesson has the lesson objectives. So let's start with therapeutic communication. Again, the objectives are there, different types of communication, understanding the differences between social and therapeutic communication, blocks to communication, things that can make it difficult to speak with people. And so you have some reading. This link should take you, actually should probably go into student view, but it will give you that particular chapter. And then there's also some PowerPoint slides. These are some that I've done through the years. They're still pretty accurate and to the point. So you have that available to you as well. So different types of communications, personality types, different levels of communication, and then different components of therapeutic communication, different factors and blocks to communication. So for these particular ones, this would be helpful on the quiz to refer back to the PowerPoint or have that PowerPoint available to you while you're taking the quiz, because the quiz is open note for the quiz. And then the lesson includes some of that reading, and then also gives you this is the recorded PowerPoint if you wanted to listen to it. I love this video. This is a video from Friends, and it talks about nonverbal cues, the way that our faces are, our expressions, body movements, those kind of things. So I always think that's pretty cool. And then just some supplemental resources. We talk a lot about how to act or communicate online, right? Because the tone and the what's behind what you're trying to communicate is not always apparent in an online setting. And then communicating in marriage, guidelines for parent-child communication. And then as you can see at the bottom of the lesson page is the reflection journal and the prompts that you have for that. And then the activity or assignment that you have for this particular concept for the communication, I thought it would be interesting. What I've done in the past is had students pair up and work on some scenarios that had to do with therapeutic communication, but I always run into trouble because some students aren't available, other students are available, some students don't put in as much time and effort. And so I thought, well, AI is a thing that is pretty popular right now. Let's try looking at that. And so you should be able to access, this is a link to Chat GPT. And what you're supposed to do, and I'll show you this in a second, let me just read you through the directions and then I can show you. You're going to initiate a role play scenario with Chat, with the AI, and see there's different potential scenarios that you can give it, and it will actually answer as either the nurse or the physical therapist or the speech therapist, or it will answer as the patient, which is really what you're wanting it to do, because you want to be the healthcare provider that's providing the therapeutic communication. And so there's different scenarios. So what you're going to do is you're going to engage in the conversation, and then you can try active listening, So when it talks to you, you can say, oh yeah, I'm listening to you. Thank you. You can ask open-ended questions. You kind of have to look at the communication PowerPoint and that lesson to understand what all these things are about. You can provide clarifying, validation, being present. And then it says to document the interaction. So you could take a screenshot, you could copy and paste what's been up. Sometimes you can even ask, you can ask Chat GPT to put the whole thing in a Word doc for you. And then you have all the information there. And then wherever you use therapeutic strategies, you'd want to identify that in the document. And then you want to write a reflection that talks about the techniques that you used. How did you adapt your communication? What went well? What could you improve? And how might it help you prepare for real world? That shouldn't say nursing communication. That should be healthcare professional communication. I'll have to go change that. My apologies. And then what you turn in is your the conversation that's highlighted, and then your reflection. And so I made a copy or a picture, I think, of yeah. So the first exchange, there was a second exchange that I had. We were talking about gosh, I can't remember which one this was. Oh, so this is a teenager who's kind of struggling, who has asthma. And so we were talking about that. And so the teenager, this is AI as the teenager that's talking, and then me as the healthcare professional, asking an open-ended, this is the annotation. So like an open-ended question to gather more information, active listening because the teen sounds scared. So what I did is I took what the conversation was, and then I added those notes in there about the different techniques that I used. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know, Veronica or Carlos, does that make sense? I'll go on to Chat GPT here in a second. I just wanted to show you, and then you would write a reflection based on that. There's Veronica. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Does this make sense so far?
Yes, it makes sense to me.
It makes sense. Okay. And I'm hoping that it's easier because Chat GPT is always available, whereas other classmates are not always available. And then these are different prompts. Choose at least two. So my suggestion would be if you want to choose like that preschooler and then maybe a young adult, like something from young and something from older, you could do that. It doesn't have to be these exact ones. You could come up with something that you want. If you are wanting to be a social worker, for example, you could tweak it around to be more of have a social work theme to it, or physical therapy, or whatever you think, as long as it's two different age groups. But students generally like a prompt and want to know what they want to do. And then just some tips for success. These are the objectives, again, that we are meeting. And then there's a rubric. I believe it's worth 20 points. And it tells you, about the reflection and to use the therapeutic techniques. And that the conversation's documented. You want at least 5 exchanges, so a back and forth of at least 5 times. They say something 5 times, you say something 5 times, because that's a conversation. Let me see. Let's take let's try this one. So we'll take this one. So I'm just going to copy that. And then I'm going to go to Chat GPT. Does anybody use Chat GPT or other AI kind of things like this? No? That's okay.
I have, but for math.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that, definitely. Okay. And so I'm going to say, for me, because I'm a nurse, I'm going to say, I am going to be the nurse and you are going to be the patient for this I guess scenario, whatever you want to say it for this scenario, helps if I type appropriately. Be the nurse, you're going to be the patient for this scenario. And we are going to have me practice therapeutic communication. You can, communication. Hey, you can also, if you wanted to include, and let it know that you wanted to include, where is it? Need to use at least 3 of these therapeutic techniques. You can copy that as well. It loves all that kind of information, but therapeutic communication, using at least that. And then I have to go back and recopy the one that I wanted because that just all went away. Told you high blood pressure. Okay, copy. And then we'll give it the, sometimes it's going to want to give you a scenario. It thinks you want them to make one up. And this is how it's going to respond to you. So it tells you, I'm ready to be your patient. Begin when you're ready. They'll respond in the character that were, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Move that out of the way. On the character, and then it could even choose one for you. So if you wanted to give it a description, you could do that. Like if you were the physical therapist or the social worker or something. So this was the prompt that I gave it. And then it tells you, I'm going to take on the role of the 52-year-old patient. And so it'll give you, so here, see here, it gives you, patient sits down across from you looking a little anxious. So there's your nonverbals, but trying to stay composed. And so they say, I found out my blood pressure is high. The doctor said I need to change how I eat and exercise, maybe even take medication. I don't know. It's overwhelming. I've had the same habits for years. I just don't know where to start. And so then it's asking for me as the nurse to reply. So maybe something like, it must be really difficult to hear that from the doctor, which is just one sentence. You can say more. And they're nodding. Yes, it was. Always thought I was doing okay. I mean, I'm not in perfect shape. I don't think it was too serious. Now I keep wondering if I've already done too much damage. So looks down, rubbing hands together nervously. So, excuse me, Dulce, not to put you on the spot, but can you think of something you would want to say to respond? Or, excuse me, any of you, just to give it a try, Veronica or Carlos? I'll type it in for you.
I'm trying to think, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, what's your first instinct tell you that you want to say? How about
What about
yeah, Carlos?
um what about starting to have healthier meals or something?
Okay, so that is a good suggestion. How let's see, let's try that, because let me try this. So maybe something like let's talk about how you can start having healthier meals. Is that kind of what you had in mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll hit enter. We'll see what happens, right? Because to me, I'd want, and you'll see this in the response here, he's shrugging, or he or she, I don't think it says, it's the patient is shrugging and a bit defensive, but still open. I mean, I'm not against eating better, but I work long hours, just grab something quick. It's not easy to cook healthy meals when you're tired, and last thing you want to do is stand in the kitchen. And so they glance at you, waiting to see if you understand. So that kind of tells me maybe I shouldn't have gone there quite yet. Because yes, we do want to talk about that, But what it told us up here is that he's really nervous. I'm just gonna say that he's really nervous, right? And so maybe something like if we go back and look at our techniques, which again, you will learn about and read about, maybe a little more empathy, or let's try validation. So something like maybe it sounds like you might be a little scared. And he says he's worried if I've already done too much damage. So it sounds like you might be a little scared and worried that something like that maybe he's not going to get better, worried that you I don't know, won't be able to feel better. I don't know. What do you think about that, Carlos?
I think it's good, yeah.
Yeah, so let's try that and see what happens. This is why I'm thinking that AI is a good way to do this, because it doesn't matter if you do something therapeutic or non-therapeutic, it's going to actually give you the response as a person would, and it gives you the non-verbals as well. So in that way, you can see that and then go, oh, maybe I should have said something else or done something else, right? You could also ask it, uh-oh, sounds like I didn't say the right thing. What were you wanting me to say? Like you could even ask the computer, you could ask it that, and it would give you an answer. So yeah, I guess I'm scared. I don't want this to get worse. My dad had a stroke in his 50s. Okay, so here we go. This is telling us more information. I keep thinking about that now. I just don't want that to be me, but it's hard to imagine changing everything overnight. So I'm not going to keep going because I don't want to take up the whole time. But does this make sense to how you could use this in a therapeutic communication? And like I just used validation. It sounds like you might be a little scared. That's a validation technique. I used empathy. Up here, difficult to hear that from the doctor. That kind of thing. A lot of times I'll use something that is like, I don't want to, it's hard to imagine changing everything overnight. So I will do one more. I usually will say, tell me what you heard the doctor say, or something like, what did the doctor tell you? And then that will give you, right? You know, it's supposed to be blood pressure. So here we go, 152/94. Whoa, that's high. Cutting back on salt, losing weight, exercising, and starting medication. That's a lot of information to give to somebody, right? But honestly, it's all kind of blurred together after he said high blood pressure. I kept thinking, how did I get here? Right. So then, Carlos, to your point, you wanted to work on healthy meals. You might be able to say something like, okay, well, tell me, let's break this into little pieces. Is there maybe let's try tackling one thing at a time. What thing, what do you think would be the easiest for you to tackle at this time? And then you could have a conversation, see how that conversation goes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Maybe even a little fun. Dare I say fun? Maybe.
Do you want us to
Yeah.
just like kind of copy it and paste the whole like conversation then? Okay.
Yeah. You can also, let's see, can you please make a Word doc of our conversation? Let's see what it says. I think on the free version, it will make you a Word doc. If it doesn't make you a Word doc, then yes, you can just copy and paste it into a Word doc. And so it will actually, I can't remember if this is on the free one or not, but it will actually make you a document. And then, like I said, if it doesn't, you can cut and paste into a Word doc. But then what I might do is, must be really difficult. So I would put, can you see my Word doc? Yeah.
No,
Empathy. No? Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing and let me share. Because I don't know, it does that sometimes. How about now? Is that the Word doc?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So like this was empathy. This one was validation. Oops. Do that like in a different color. So validation, what I let them know that I feel, they might be scared. They might be scared, right? And so that's using validation as one of those things that we talked about with therapeutic communication. Same thing for empathy. Now let's talk about how you can start having healthier meals, not necessarily the right place for that, but not a bad thing. It's I mean, I don't know if I would, you could say if you felt like you asked the question and then you didn't get very far with it, you could say, maybe I should have asked an open-ended question, or maybe maybe it's a block to communication, right? Maybe you go back and look at the list of blocks to communication and say, oh, this was more of a block to communication. So that's why I tried to use validation after that. That's kind of the learning process. I bet you could do, let's see. Let me stop sharing and share again. This one. Hey, you. No. Is it back to the Chat GPT?
yes.
Yes. Tell me which, come here. Tell me which, therapeutic, no, you can't type. Sheesh. Techniques, I used and, where oh my goodness. This is what happens when you hold your dog and type. Okay. Oops. I'm so sorry. Here we go. Tell me what therapeutic techniques I used and if there were any blocks to communication, and see what it says. Again, I don't know. I'm just putting these out here to show you different ways and on the recording to show people how to do this. So you did a strong job incorporating communication to breakdown what you used and potential blocks. So empathy, reflection could also be validation. Yeah, open-ended question. Tell me what you heard the doctor say. And then, so here is a block, premature problem solving. It's well-intentioned, very well-intentioned, but we need to kind of explore the feeling parts first. So there you go. And what I would say is if you asked questions like this, go ahead and copy and paste that into the document because it will help you reflect on how to have conversations. So that's why I kind of like this because I think it's kind of fun. You can keep asking it questions. You can continue with the conversation. You could pause the conversation here and then tell it you want to start back up again. I just think there's a lot of different possibilities for it. And like I said, if you want to explore social work or physical therapy, speech therapy, some other healthcare profession, you can put that in and you can have that conversation as those people. Okay, let us go back. Where are we going back? Let's go back to modules. So are we back? Can you see the week 3 module? Is that what's on your screen now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So let's move to the family influences on growth and development. So again, you have your link back to the module. We're going to talk about cultural and family influences, but I broke it down into two separate lessons. The learning objectives for this lesson. So this time we talked about communication. Now we're going to talk about how different family instances, situations, different family compositions, if you will, the way families are made up, how that could affect growth and development across the lifespan. And so you have some resources here for the reading. So this would be the resource. It's a book. You would download it, and then the suggested reading is chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then there's also a PowerPoint that you can look at to help you understand those things. And there is in the PowerPoint and in the reading, it's going to talk about the family systems theory. And so I'll come back to that in a second. And then there's also a video here that talks about the most important, or what this person, Tom Weisner, what he feels to be the most important influence on child development. And so be thinking about, do you agree or disagree? What do you think is the most important influence? You probably want to take a look at this and think about it, because it will probably come back around on a quiz perhaps. And so you might want to kind of have already thought about, or in the reflection, it might be the journal, might come back around as well. So you want to take a look at that. And then there are your questions for the reflection questions for your journal at the bottom of the lesson page. So when we talk about families, we talk about something called family systems theory. And basically what family systems theory is talking about the structure of a family, how it's put together, and how certain events affect one person in the family. And then that means that the rest of the family, if they're a fairly functional family, shifts in relation to that. And so when you talk about, we talked about, what was it in on the quiz, access to healthcare. So if there's limited access to healthcare, how does that not only affect the person, but how does it affect the family? And most people were really clear about, well, it could take the family has to care for the person. They might not be able to work. It could be a financial burden. The roles in the family could change. And so other people have to take on different roles. The lesson also talks about functional and dysfunctional families. And so generally a functional family is able to make those shifts, whereas a dysfunctional family is not able to make those shifts, and thereby puts more burden on the family as a whole when there's some kind of, I don't want to say crisis, but crisis, something different that comes up. And so what this activity assignment is going to ask you to do is to, again, there's the objectives, and you're going to use the family systems theory to analyze and understand different family roles, boundaries, dynamics in functional and dysfunctional families. So you get to choose a family from media, the news, from a TV show, a movie, something like that. And it will help you with that. There's also an article here on what makes a family functional or dysfunctional. So these are going to be your, let's see if this will open up here. Excuse me. These are going to be your resources. And so this is just a little handout that talks about different key concepts of family systems theory in terms of how the family members interact, or their boundaries, messages, rules, subsystems, these kind of things. You guys can read about that more in on your time when you're looking at that. But really, it's this first page that's important to your assignment, because you're going to use these terms when you're talking about the families that you choose. And then this one should take you to functional, dysfunctional, gives you different ideas, what makes a family functional versus dysfunctional. And then you're going to describe the family dynamics. You're going to write an essay analyzing how the family systems theory helps to understand differences between functional and dysfunctional families. And so then thinking about that, how might that affect growth and development of the family members? So this tells you what you need to do. double space, 12-point, 1-inch margins, 500, at least 500 words. Make sure that you look at the rubric, which we'll do in a second. And so what you're supposed to do, select a family from the movies, TV, current events. If you get stuck, I have 2 case studies at the bottom. You could choose to use those as well. You present 2 families. You use 1 functional family and 1 dysfunctional family. So not 1 family that is both functional and dysfunctional, which most families are given any particular day of the week, but one that is really thought as a functional family and one that is thought of a dysfunctional family. And then use concepts from the family systems theory and provide an analysis of each family. So let's see, use concepts for an analysis. So how you think family systems theory helps in understanding the differences between functional and dysfunctional families, how you think the functionality might affect the growth and development, and then you want to provide specific examples. So these are different ideas that people have used in the past. And if you don't like any of those, you can pick one of your own. You might want to just shoot me a message just to make sure that I think it's a good choice. Or you could use one of these case studies. There's 2 little case studies down here that you could use. So for example, let's take The Simpsons. Everybody knows The Simpsons, right? If I say The Simpsons, and there's all these new shows and all kinds of things so that I'm not even aware of. So if there's one you like, you go for it, use that. I'll use The Simpsons. And so if I'm talking about family systems theory, let's go back and look at the handout here. Right? Everybody knows Simpsons? Yes? You can give me a thumbs up or something so I know you know The Simpsons. Yeah. Okay. And then yes, I got thumbs up. Thank you in the comments there. Yay, thank you. I keep forgetting to open up my comments so that I can see them. That over there. Okay. So let's look at the components, the concepts of family systems theory. So you don't have to use all of them, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 would be good, but interactions, right? Do we know how the Simpsons interact? Predictable interaction patterns that maintain the status quo, the equilibrium, and so people know their roles and expectations, right? So Marge, the mom, like she's always mom, right? Her role doesn't necessarily change necessarily, or the kids, right? They're Bart and Homer have a certain relationship. There's Maggie, there's, everybody has kind of, but they all interact a certain way. Every once in a while, you'll get a moment, a really like loving moment between the baby and Marge, or Bart and Homer will have a certain interaction. So maybe that, is something that defines whether they're functional or not. I think we tend to think of the Simpsons as a dysfunctional family, but they do have some functional moments on occasion. Are there boundaries in the family? Not necessarily. Are there subsystems? So for example, with subsystems, there you go. Like I just talked about Homer and Bart's relationship, that would be considered a subsystem in the family. Is it, how do they keep homeostasis? If it means retaining dysfunctional behaviors, I think that's kind of a key thing for the Simpsons. The way that they work together as a family is not very functional, but they maintain stability. They really kind of help each other out, that kind of thing. And so that's how you would address that part of the rubric, bringing in those key factors from family systems theory. And then now the fact that Simpsons has been on for, 30 years, and they've never grown a day in their life is a whole nother thing. But you could potentially say what you think, like, for example, Bart and Lisa, what might they look like if they were 30 years old based on this relationship, the family relationship that they've had right now that we see. And so that's why I'm saying if you can come up with specific examples, that would be helpful. Hold on a second. Come here. Come on. Yeah, Pops is not doing his job. I know, because he's busy. That's okay. Right. And then if you look at the rubric, so it tells you select 2 families, a functional and a dysfunctional family, using the concepts in which is the most points, is 6 points. You know, bringing in the family systems theory. You're analyzing each family, how you think the family systems theory will help in understanding what makes a family functional versus dysfunctional. And that's basically it. It's 10 points. It's 2 points for the formatting, and then the basic majority of the points is the analysis. However, you do have to have the 2 separate families. And I have had students lose points there because they've only used one family. And again, like I said, you could use these the case studies if you would rather do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, cool. All right, then we're going to look at the last part of the lesson, which is the cultural influences on growth and development. And this will overlap a little bit with the families. These are the objectives. There is different reading here that takes you to let's see, Overstreet is a Libre text. So it'll take you to 1.3 and you just kind of read. Now, just because you're here doesn't mean that you can't move on to the next lesson. If you hit these arrows here on either side, it will take you to the next part or the previous part of the lesson. So you're welcome to engage as much with the book as you would like. And then culture, right, and then race and ethnicity. There we go. Right, so there's another page from a different book, but still talking about those things. And then let's see. And then these are different articles that kind of talk about what does it mean to be culturally sensitive, culturally humble, culturally aware. People kind of throw those terms. They have different meanings somewhat. I'm not going to ask you questions about that. But for example, like this is how to become a more culturally sensitive nurse. What I will tell you is that when I started out in nursing, we had to learn very specific things about different cultures. Like we would actually do presentations that would talk, for example, about Hispanic culture or Filipino culture. And we would have to talk about religion and food, activities, languages, different things like that. And we had to, at that point in time, that was 30 some years ago, we had to memorize all of those characteristics so that we would know, like hot and cold, yin and yang, things like that. And then it kind of turned around to that we didn't need to know specifics anymore. We just had to really be aware that, yes, there were some things that were different in cultures, but as long as we asked the person that they would tell us, like I can't just assume that you want this hot because you're, from an Asian culture, for example. I needed to ask the person. And now it's come back to because we have terms like cultural appropriation, things like that, where we need to know what these specific components of a culture are and to kind of combine and then also ask the person, is this what they would like? What would they like? How do they want to be treated? What kind of foods? Are there any cultural practices? I come from a mother-baby background, so working in labor and delivery and nursery intensive care units to, ask mothers, is there a specific something cultural that you would like us to adhere to, in the birth process, in being when ill, in the death and dying process. And I find that works really well. Another thing that comes into play, and this is going to come into the week 3 discussion. So we do have some discussions in the class. I think there's 2 or 3, but we are also going to talk about, about implicit bias. So implicit bias being those things that are inherent within us that lead us to feel a certain way about somebody when we see them. And so the initial post, and I also have the initial post reminder. I'm hoping that will help. So you're going to go to Project Implicit. I don't know if anybody's done this before for any of your other classes, but you go to Project, oops, I'll have to check that link again. So that should be, it was good the other day when I checked it. Okay, I will go back and check it again because I did check it last week. So you go to Project Implicit, and what it basically does is give you different tests that you can take that talk about different cultures, ethnicities, races. Let me see if I can project implicit test. There we go. Oh, the website's not up. That's what the problem is. Okay, I will have to go back and look at that because that'll be a little difficult for you to do if you cannot get to the website. So I will check on that. So you would take 2 of these bias tests that will then give you some results about how biased you were depending. There's like LGBTQ, there's like political, there's African American, Filipino, Asian, all different types of subsets of tests that you could take. And then there is the cultural self-awareness questionnaire. It's a couple questions. And again, this is you answering the questions, and then you're going to reflect on this in the discussion. And so I know myself, I have a clear sense of my own ethnic, cultural, and racial identity. You know, always, never, sometimes, check my assumptions, challenging my stereotypes. I'm aware of my stereotypes, how my culture informs my judgment, accepting ambiguity, being curious, aware of my privilege if I am white, which may not apply to you if you're not Caucasian. And so then you score yourself, and then you take those results, and that will be part of the discussion. And so these are the questions to answer in the discussion. So reflect on your feelings and thoughts after completing the 2 tests and answering the questions in the questionnaire, and then answer these questions. Which implicit bias test did you choose and why? Were the results what you expected? How did you feel while taking the test? It's a visual test. It kind of gives you 2 pictures, and it asks you a question, and you choose whichever one represents how you feel. And then for the cultural self-awareness questionnaire, were there some questions that were easier or more difficult to answer? Did your answers surprise you? And how do you think understanding your implicit bias and having cultural self-awareness helps you in providing patient-centered care, culturally competent care as a healthcare professional, regardless of which profession you're going into, or if you're not going into healthcare, you know, how might it just help you in everyday life? And then you reply to 2 peers. And so check the rubric, and oh, Bella already started. Oh, okay. So she was actually able to go in and oh, good. People have started. Well, then maybe that link works. Maybe it just didn't work for me. So it looks like people have been able to get in. So if there's trouble with the link, then let me know. Somebody let me know. It could just be on my computer that I can't access.
Just to let you know, when I looked at it before class, the rubric talked about recording a video like we did the first week, introducing ourselves.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. Why did it do that? We didn't need to do that. Hold on, let me look. Show rubric. Thank you for letting me know. Oh, that's because it was initial post. Concepts. Perfect. It talks about a video in this one?
Yeah, so it's under the initial post reminder. When I was looking at that one, if you scroll all the way,
okay.
it says a rubric, a different rubric.
Oh, okay. If I go to that discussion one? Wait, hold
Yes.
on. Okay, hold on. Let me go back one. Probably because I copied it from something else because it's not a actual rubric. Aha. So self-awareness, that's the questions, course objectives. Oh, okay. Got it. Let me just get rid of that then. Thank you for letting me know, because that was a totally different assignment that I used to do. There you go. Right, there we go. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. That was an easy fix. I like easy fixes. Thank you, Veronica. Okay, so let us continue. We did that. We did that. We went over the discussion. We went over therapeutic communication assignment, family systems theory assignment, the journal. You have your prompts that you're working on. Let's just quickly look at the focus areas for the week 3 quiz. Again, refer to the PowerPoint for a lot of these. Defining family systems, blocks to communication, effective communication, similarities and differences between social and therapeutic communication, and then about cultural differences. So that brings everything into play there. And then that should take us back to the week 3 module, which it does. And what else am I thinking? Any questions on the week 3 information?
No.
Hey, Dulce, you get a question? No? Good? Good. And then what I'm going to do for the health promotion campaign, I will do a separate video on that to go over exactly what I'm looking for, because then you just have to go to that part to look at that. It's going to pull in a lot of the things that we're talking about right now before we even get into the developmental stages. And you're actually going to put a health campaign, health promotion, disease prevention campaign together, say campaign in quotes. That's something that you would like to do, not that you actually implement, and choose a different age group that you want to focus on. So I will do a separate video for that. What else can I tell you? I'm trying to give feedback on assignments. Is that working for people? Is the feedback I'm giving making sense?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that you can think of that I should bring up right now, or that you guys have questions about?
I
Because
just have a
otherwise I will.
question on the
Yeah.
community windshield assignment. So we have to write a paper on it, correct?
Well, it can be a presentation if you want. You could do it as like a Google Slides. Let me go back and let's find the description. Because most people end up doing a presentation. The notes that you're taking, those kind of things, are for to help you fill out that form, that has the different components. Let's look at
The Word doc.
Let's see, social community windshield. And I'll put a link to that in the week 3 as well. So ask me again, does it have to be a paper, or it could be a presentation? So you have a choice: prepare a presentation or a paper analyzing how what you observed in that checklist in terms of social determinants of health might influence growth and development of residents in the community in different life stages. And so basically the most students I've been doing this particular one for a couple years now, and most students feel that it's easier to just do a presentation, like a Google Slides or something. So you want to make sure that you identify the community by zip code or name, and then talk about how you kept yourself safe, or how you conducted your research of going through the community. Did you walk? Did you talk to people? Did you drive through and take pictures? And then the next part is the using that checklist, the social determinants of health checklist. So some students will actually take the components of that checklist and divide them into the 5 social determinants of health and do it that way. Other people will just group them together and put them in a slide and then talk about social determinants separately. The documentation in terms of I can tell if you took notes based on the information that you're giving me. And then if you have photos or if you took like a video as you were walking or driving through the community, you can include that. And then the analysis, which is the most important part, it's worth the most points, is providing an in-depth analysis of how the social determinants could potentially influence growth and development. And so however you decide that, for example, playgrounds, that would be that could be community or it could be neighborhood and built environment. And you can look at, for example, are there a lot of playgrounds? If so, are they, where they need to, how many schools, how many elementary schools, how many high schools, middle schools, that type of thing. And then if there are, if there's no playgrounds in that particular zip code or community, how might that affect growth and development of children if they're not able to get outside and exercise and breathe fresh air and interact socially with other people, or the parents that are taking them there being able to interact? If there are only fast food restaurants, there's no healthy food, how might that affect the health of children, adults, the elderly? How might transportation, lack of transportation, roads that are poorly kept, no bus service, transportation issues, or the fact that maybe the hospital is 5 miles away to get to the nearest hospital or clinic, and how would that affect growth and development? Does that help a little bit, Veronica?
Yes.
And you can do it again, yes, as a slideshow is fine. If you like to do that, you can do Canva, you can do Google Slides, if you want to write a paper, that's fine as well. But like I said, most people choose to do a slide presentation.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, of course. No problem. What else? Because if you have a question, I'm sure somebody else has a question. So that's always good. Anything else? All right, then I'm going to say have a great rest of your week. You know how to get a hold of me, message me, make an appointment for student hours if you have more questions. And you guys are doing great. Keep it up. And I will see you throughout the week then.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Yeah, you too.